Love is often a reminder of something that was. And because we still feel that love, it's a reminder of something that still is. A couple of months ago, I remembered cookies my mother had made for me when I was young. I loved those cookies. I searched for the recipe, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I asked my sister if she had it, and she said no. She obviously mentioned it to her daughter, my niece, because I soon received a text from her with the recipe. Needless to say, I was overjoyed to receive that short text. A short time later, I unwrapped a Christmas present from that same niece. It was a dish towel, and written on it was that same wonderful cookie recipe. Of course, I thought it was a sweet gift, but then I looked closer, and it instantly became something truly precious. Not only was it my mother's recipe, but it was written in her own very distinctive handwriting. I immediately felt not only my mother's presence, but also her love, and that was the best gift of all. Obviously, love is found in our memories, but it's also found in some of the most unexpected places, like this very sweet and simple dish towel. I actually believe love is all around us. I've seen it firsthand at both the fellowship in Houston and at our home church in Mississippi. Years ago, I'd walk into the fellowship before the service on Sunday and see Louise Peace, Jan's mother, sitting in the front. There was just something about her that exuded warmth, compassion, and love. I saw something very similar at our home church on many Sundays when Nelda and Tom would walk in together or sit together in their pew. Their devotion and love for each other was palpable. We all know love when we see it, and especially when we feel it personally. There is no way I can do justice to love in the brief time I have here today. So instead, I'll share with you the thoughts of some of my favorite authors on the subject. So here goes. A book I cherish and often use in my sermons is titled Giving Thanks, The Gifts of Gratitude, written by M.J. Ryan. In her book, she starts off each entry with a quote from someone famous or relatively famous, and then expands on that thought with her own reflections in a short essay. She shared the following quote from inspirational author Daphne Rose Kingma. In relation to others, gratitude is good manners. In relation to ourselves, it's a habit of the heart and a spiritual discipline. Let me say that again. It's a habit of the heart and a spiritual discipline. Ryan then goes on to say, in my 20s and 30s, I learned a great deal about thankfulness from Daphne Rose Kingma. We spent a great deal of time together working on her books, and over, I would watch her make a personal connection to the people who came across her path. Garbage collectors, long-distance operators, the person selling coffee on the corner. No matter what was going on in her own life, no matter how rushed or upset she was, she took the time to connect. I'd hear her on the phone with the airline reservations desk. In the course of getting a flight, she'd learn the woman's name, where she lived, and the fact that she, like Daphne, loved flashy high-heel shoes. Daphne was so genuinely appreciative of the help that the other person felt washed in a warm bath of love. It was then I realized that while gratitude was a feeling, it could be cultivated, and I set out to emulate her. As we grow, one of our spiritual tasks is to cultivate positive emotions as habits of the heart, as Daphne calls them. What this means is that we learn to love even when we don't feel loving. Be kind when we'd rather be surly, and grateful when we don't particularly feel like being thankful. In this way, we turn feelings which come and go into conscious attitudes that we act upon, even if we don't feel like it. So I hope you will considering practicing what Daphne calls these habits of the heart. And I think at the same time, you may also cultivate love. Currently, we are living in a very difficult time. A book and author who I greatly admire is When Things Fall Apart, Heart Advice for Difficult Times, written by Buddhist Pema Chodron. According to Chodron, love is all about conquering fear. Chodron says, the father of a 2-year-old talks about turning on the television and unexpectedly seeing the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City. He watched as the firemen carried the limp and bloody bodies of toddlers from the ruins of the daycare center on the building's first floor. He says that in the past, he was able to distance himself from other people's suffering. But since he's become a father, things have changed. He feels as if each of those children were his child. He feels the grief of all the parents as his own grief. This kinship with the suffering of others, this inability to continue to regard it from afar, is the discovery of our own soft spot, the discovery of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word that means awakened heart. It is said to be present in all beings. Just as butter is inherent in milk and oil is inherent in a sesame seed, this soft spot is inherent in you and in me. We think that by protecting ourselves from suffering, we are being kind to ourselves. The truth is, we only become more fearful, more hardened, and more alienated. We experience ourselves as being separate from the whole. This separateness becomes like a prison for us, a prison that restricts us to our personal hopes and fears and to caring only for the people nearest to us. Curiously enough, if we primarily try to shield ourselves from discomfort, we actually suffer. Yet, when we don't close off and we let our hearts break, we discover our kinship with all beings. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, describes 2 kinds of selfish people, the unwise and the wise. Unwise, selfish people think only of themselves, and the result is confusion and pain. Wise, selfish people know that the best thing they can do for themselves is to be there for others. As a result, they experience joy. Spiritual awakening is frequently described as a journey to the top of a mountain. We leave our attachments and our worldliness behind and slowly make our way to the top. At the peak, we have transcended all pain. The only problem with this metaphor is that we leave all others behind. Our drunken brother, our schizophrenic sister, our tormented animals and friends. Their suffering continues unrelieved by our personal escape. In the process of discovering bodhicitta, the journey actually goes down and not up. It's as if the mountain pointed toward the center of the earth instead of reaching into the sky. Instead of transcending the suffering of all creatures, we move toward the turbulence and doubt. We jump into it. We slide into it. We tiptoe into it. We move toward it however we can. We explore the reality and unpredictability of insecurity and pain, and we try not to push it away. If it takes years, if it takes lifetimes, we let it be as it is. At our own pace, without speed or aggression, we move down and down and down. With us move millions of others, our companions in awakening from fear. At the bottom, we discover water, the healing water of bodhicitta. Right down there, in the thick of things, we discover the love that will not die. We can try to run away and hide from our fears. However, they will never truly go away. Shodran simply urges us to face and actually embrace our fears. And when we do, our love will conquer them. This is advice and wisdom I hope I have the courage to take. Now, please bear with me as I set up this next story. Marshall Ball was 8 years old when he wrote what I will eventually share with you. Marshall was born with a devastating genetic disorder that causes him to not be able to walk, talk, sit up without assistance, or even to feed himself. But his mind is lovely and free. Since learning to communicate by tapping letters on an alphabet board at the age of 5, Marshall has never expressed anger or frustration about his circumstances. Instead, he has written profound thoughts and poems about love, listening, kindness, acceptance, and God. Through his wondrous writings, Marshall has become what he has always said he wanted to be, a teacher who shares fine thoughts. Now I'll share an excerpt from his book, Kiss of God. September 15th, 1994, began as a normal school day when Marshall and his grandmother, GM, as he calls her, went to school. GM worked as Marshall's aide at school. Not long after they arrived, Marshall's third grade teacher said she had some sad news for the class. She explained that one of their fellow third graders had died over the weekend of a brain trauma. Although the little girl, Ashley, was not in their class, the teacher wanted the students to know about it in case they knew Ashley or heard about it around school. Marshall began almost immediately spelling to GM that he needed to talk to Ashley's parents. GM explained that it wasn't possible and he needed to wait until he got home to talk to his mother about it. However, Marshall was not to be deterred and continued to ask to talk with Ashley's parents. So when he returned home from school that day, GM told Marshall's mother the sad story and explained Marshall's insistence to talk to the Morgans. His mother suggested Marshall write them a letter. He agreed, and within a very short period of time, wrote the letter. He already knew what he wanted to say. The next morning, GM and Marshall left for school with the letter to send to the Morgans. When they took the letter to the school office to see if it could be sent over to the family, they learned that many of the teachers, students, and their families had decided to do the same thing. It was not surprising to see so much love and sympathy represented by perhaps hundreds of letters. The very next day, an unexpected thing happened. A young mother came to the school and asked to meet a student. His name was Marshall Ball. Of course, the school staff recognized Mrs. Morgan right away and sent her to meet Marshall. She must have been very surprised when she first saw Marshall sitting in his wheelchair, and more so when she discovered that he had to spell out each word letter by letter to communicate. However, like Marshall, she was not to be deterred in meeting him or expressing her appreciation for his letter. She said she had come to meet the child who had written such a beautiful and meaningful letter. She was touched by his words in a significant way and wanted to know if it was all right if his letter were read at Ashley's memorial service that weekend. Marshall quickly pointed to the letter Y on his alphabet board, answering yes. Mrs. Morgan also asked Marshall if he would attend the service that would be held outside. GM and Marshall said they would love to attend. So that Saturday, Marshall and his grandmother attended the large memorial service held on a beautiful green lawn on a warm, sunny day. This experience was Marshall's first with death, but he was calm and peaceful, believing the words he had written to Ashley's parents. The following is what Marshall said in his brief letter to the Morgans. Dear Mrs. Morgan, can you be good and know Ashley dearly talks about good God? And good Ashley knows God is taking fine care of her. Good, beautiful Ashley manages clear, real, sweet thoughts, giving gentle good to God. Victory comes in seeing harmony. Victory loves harmony. Can you greatly give Ashley harmony? You I love, Marshall S. Ball, 3rd grade. Marshall's love letter eased the pain a mother felt after the loss of her child. Love is mysterious and beautiful, and it often heals. You can find all of Marshall's early writings in his book, Kiss of God, The Wisdom of a Silent Child, published in 1999 when Marshall was 13 years old. I'll conclude today with a short excerpt on love from The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And think not you can direct the course of love. For love, if it finds you worthy, directs your course. Love has no other desire but to fulfill itself. But if you love and must needs have desires, let these be your desires. To melt and be like a running brook that sings its melody to the night. To know the pain of too much tenderness. To be wounded by your own understanding of love, and to bleed willingly and joyfully. To wake at dawn with a winged heart and give thanks for another day of loving. To rest at the noon hour and meditate love's ecstasy. To return home at eventide with gratitude, and then to sleep with a prayer for the beloved in your heart and a song of praise upon your lips. Amen and namaste.